Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Cardboard Hands. We're here at episode 31, just trucking right along here. I'm with my co-host, as usual, Mr. Giovanni, the one, the only Retrospects, and myself, the Old Card Shop. We're here for another episode, but before we get too started, and before I start grilling Giovanni on what's new with him, we have a little bit of housekeeping to go through. We are going to be doing a few things with the channel moving forward. We're going to be redesigning our logo a little bit. Now we have a logo already, but it's sort of a little bit of a it's not a real logo. We're
It's
going
a
to be trying to do it.
placekeeper. It's a placekeeper.
Yes, thank you. That's why he finishes my sandwiches when necessary. But the logo is going to be changing eventually here, and we're also going to be doing a little bit of a merch drop when we change the logo, sort of corresponding with that. So you're going to see a little branding change. And then we are also going to be adding, this is going to be sort of the big news, is we're going to be adding a avenue for supporting the podcast in the form of a Patreon. We're going to try to be working around with like what we're going to be offering with the Patreon, but for the most part, it's going to be for support, and we're going to be doing something a little bonus. But we wanted to hear from you guys of maybe some of your suggestions of something that you maybe would want to see in a Patreon, something that might make you want to like join, that would add value, that we could do without, losing too much time or effort. But obviously we want to put some time and effort in, but just like, something that makes sense, that would make sense for you guys. We have some ideas, but we're curious. So that's kind of the big news. Housekeeping for the podcast. Nothing's ever going to be paywalled. We're not going to put anything behind, a paywall as far as like content or things like that. That's why I say it's going to be mostly support based, but it's just something that we think moving forward will be beneficial to both ourselves and our viewers. So thank you all for continuing to watch, and we appreciate everyone who has commented, subbed, and everything. And then moving forward, we're going to start offering a little bit more extra ability to support, because we're going to try to plan to do a little bit more for the podcast too. So we feel like it's just natural. So thank you everyone for going through that with us. And now let's get right into what's new, man. How you doing today, Retro? Sorry for all the talking, the intro stuff, but now that's out of the way, I feel like we can say hello and do everything, our normal stuff. So what's going on, man?
No, you're good. You're good. I think it's good. We definitely, like you said, like we want to provide value, maybe give people like a more direct line to us if they have questions or need help with things. And, maybe we can provide value in that way, stuff that we might not normally answer on like a YouTube or things like that. So yeah, let us know what you guys think, what you guys need, what would be helpful and provide value to you. As far as what's new, man, like last week, sorry we didn't record. It was like last week was rough for me, dude. Like I got sick, really sick, still kind of like, coming out of it. So if I sound a little nasally, I'm sorry about that. But not only was I sick, but my power was the power in like the entire city was like really bad wind, and it was off for like 3 days. So like from Monday night until Wednesday night at like 10 or 11 p.m. the power was out. So I'm sitting there sick in my house, cold as hell. It's dark. I'm sitting there with like the little amount of remaining battery on my laptop watching Naruto Shippuden because I have like the episodes downloaded. It was horrible, dude. Like, and then after the first day of the power being out, I'm like, okay, like, because I have to ship every day, top rated seller, eBay, blah, blah, blah. So I'm taking like the 20% battery that I have left on my phone, going through the orders and pre-packaging them like at my house, and then writing on the outside of the package, it's this slab or this card or whatever, loading all the packages into my backpack, taking my laptop and my label printer over to my mom's house, printing the labels over there because she had power, putting the labels on all the packages, then dropping them off at the post office, letting my stuff charge while I'm at the post office, and then taking it and then going back home to sit in the cold and the dark. Yeah, so that's what's new. That's what's new with me. Like, thankfully the power is back. I'm starting to come out of the sickness, but man, it was a rough one. And when things like that happen, you really appreciate, life's little pleasures, like having electricity. So what about you? I know you went to a pretty big card show and stuff like that. So your week was probably a lot better than mine.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was nothing crazy, like no power outage or whatever, and I didn't have to like, travel to go ship anything. I did travel, like you said. I went to Las Vegas for the first time in over, I don't know, I think it was 11 years was when I did the math while I was there of like when the last time I was in Vegas. It was about 11 years ago. So I didn't realize it had been that long and it had changed a lot. But I went for the front row card show. Shout out to my friend, the Mexican hipsters, Mons. He's on YouTube as well. He's a friend of ours. We've been a lot with him locally in California, but he told us about a show called the Front Row Card Show that he did down in Pasadena earlier or at the end of last year. And so he said, "Hey, they're doing one in Vegas at the beginning of in January." I said, enough said, say no more, sign me up. I've never been to Vegas for a card show. It sounds like a good time. So we went, and I went kind of blindly, not really knowing anything about the show. And I found a new favorite show. Like, I love Collecticon. It's fantastic. It's a good show. Like, I look forward to Collecticons every year, but they're really a big, huge thing. They're really expensive, it feels like, for both the guests who are going to it, is to travel to. It's just a whole big thing. It feels really, really expensive, which is fine if it's like one time a year. But the front row card show is like every month or every 2 months, they do a show either in Pasadena, Vegas, or Arizona. They kind of cycle somewhere on the West Coast. And the shows are really big. They're much cheaper to get entry. I think it's like $5 to $10 for an entry fee to get into the show. They're
How much is
mostly
it to vend?
it's
What
the
was it for
vending
you
is
to?
like $200 a table, 250, 200, something around there, depending on which one of the shows it is. And it's a 2-day event. It's a very immaculately well run show. Like the people who run the show, the showrunners, do a great job organizing, giving out all the information, making sure that your placement is right, and everyone has their tables and their cases, and they have extras of things that they need, and they offer like different size tables, like just everything about it. You can pay a little more to be up front, so you can like pay premium pricing to get premium placement, which is something that I wish all Collecticons did, because it's sort of like the most civil way of deciding who gets to go where, instead of just giving preference to your favorite people and putting them in the front. It's like if you pay more, you get to go up front. That seems very fair. And
Wait,
so
wait, really quick. Let me ask you your opinion on this. When we go to Collecticon and they have like, PSA has a booth, maybe Beckett has a booth, Diamond Service Grading. Do you think that they like all similar things should be in one area to make it easier? Like, do you think all grading companies should be in one area? All Kickstarter TCGs should be, because to me, it kind of feels disjointed when it's like, oh, Troll and Toad's here, Table with Slab is here, then it's Diamond Service Grading, then it's a Kickstarter TCG, and then Golden's way over here and PSA's way over there. Like, do you think that all similar things should be in one area, or like you said, should it be like a pay for placement, even for the big businesses kind of thing?
I personally don't think that everything being in a central location is that necessary. I go to some local card shows where there is a TCG room and like a sports card room, and they're separated. It's in the same event though, and you just walk through a door, and that's how it's separated. It's not like you have to go to a separate building or anything. So I don't think that that really matters that much. And I actually do think that I disagree with you now that I say that out loud. I think I disagree with your take on it, in that I think that it's better to have it spread out, because it encourages the guests to go walk amongst and go between the different things. So like if you were going to check out all the grading companies or whatever, and you wanted to go to Collecticon, but you just want to see what grading was all about, that was kind of your goal. If that was your main goal and they were all in one location, you might end up going and buying something at one little stand and then going straight to the grading section, knocking it all out in like a minute, and then never walking around the other part of the Collecticon, because you just think to yourself, oh, I don't want to go there. It's mostly Pokemon, mostly Magic, mostly MetaZoo. You just say something and then disregard it and walk out maybe. That might not be true. Maybe you would still walk around, but I think it encourages having those little booths in different places, as long as the room is not like the Chicago, the National, where it's just gigantic and you get lost and you need a whole week to explore it. As long as you can get through it in one day and walk around the room, I think that it's okay to have things spread out in the same location, even if it's similar things. And it actually maybe would provide benefit in that you don't get tired of seeing all the same things. Plus, like for me, I don't want all my competitors to be right next to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's a good point.
So anyway, so Vegas, great card show, front row card show. It went out without a hitch. Like I wanted to have some footage to show during the podcast, but my technology, it's not. I'm not tech savvy with this. But so like I wasn't able to get the footage on for our viewing right now. But it was a good card show. I am going back in April to go again. And I was really, really happy because this last time I made a friend. I made a good friend in the form of someone in the hobby that I had on the channel recently, Dave. Dave Person. He's big. He had the pre-release right
Uncle
through recently.
Dave.
Yeah, Uncle Dave, good Uncle Dave. Shout out to him, a friend of the channel now, friend of mine personally. We had a chance of going out to dinner with him while I was in Vegas, and it was just really nice to have that personal, you know, that be able to have that conversation, have like a lot of the stuff we talked about on the podcast. I could kind of go more in depth and ask questions about, and just in general get to know him. So I'm happy to have a friend in Vegas now who lives there because I didn't know that was the case with him, but it just happened to be. We had dinner, ran into each other, and it was a good time. So shout out to Dave, and we appreciate you, and we'll see you again, I'm sure, some other time in the future.
Any chance we do a double podcast in the future, like all four of us? Is that, you think that could be in the works, or is that asking a little too much?
So I've already been talking to both Dan and Dave about getting. Well, I want Dan to get on the channel to be on the trainer spotlight because he's got such a like crazy rich history in TCG, just in general TCGs, that I know that he and I could just run rampant talking about the history of that kind of stuff. So I really want to get him separated. But we have already talked about with Dave getting potentially some sort of a dual pod. So it's like it's difficult because internet situation and like timing and scheduling situation with so many people is just so much. It's so hard to do. So we'll have to try to figure out how that would work out if it ever would. But tell us down below in the comments if you guys would want to see a collaboration between Old Coffee Talks and Cardboard Hands. See if that would be fun.
We could do a versus podcast too. Us and Pokey Flips battle of the flipper podcasts or something. That would be a good one.
I love collaboration. I'm all about it.
Yeah, collaborative competition.
Yeah, and there's even Slab Podcast, the Collector Boys. We could do like Collector Boys versus Flipper Boys sort of situation. The Collector Podcast versus Flipper Cod. There's all kinds of situations with all that collab. So tell us down below in the comments and reach out to your favorite podcasts and tell them that you want to do a collaboration between us, and maybe we'll have to see if we can get it going. But there's a lot of fun that we could have with it. I mean, we're friends with all of these guys. Shout out to all the other podcasts. Anyone even we didn't mention. I watch so many podcasts that I even lose some of them, but we're friends with so many people in the hobby that we have to make benefit of that. So I think it's a good thing to do for sure. But yeah, okay. Anyway, speaking of friends, though, after Vegas, made friends with Dave, new friends, going back to Vegas and everything, I came right back to town, and man, I didn't get sick, but we had to, my poor dog, we had to take her to the vet and everything last week. So we had to deal with like that situation. So the fact that you were all out under the weather and everything, it gave me a chance to really focus on some things at home that I needed to. So it was totally fine. So don't feel bad about being sick or anything. I think the week off, I apologize for you guys who are watching. It was sort of unexpected, but having the week off was beneficial to both of us. So she's doing better now, so it's no issues or anything. So don't worry about her, but it was probably for the best. I did cry a little bit last week, though, so we'll get into that, talking about that during the some of the main topics here. But there's something else, a little bit more housekeeping, though, that we're kind of going to get to soon, right?
Yeah. Okay, so do you want me to share my screen so I can
It's up to
do.
you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
So I tell people how you ended up picking this, or if you haven't picked it already, we can do it live. Or if you already picked it before, just let me know or let them
yeah,
know.
I'm gonna run the picker live. If you guys watched our New Year's live podcast on my channel, we are going to give away this beautiful old card shop golden mystery bag. To all you had to do was comment. So on that last video, so we are going to pick the winner for that podcast or for that giveaway on that podcast right now.
Which that one got over 1,000 views. Which thank you so much for
Yeah.
supporting. You guys
Thank
are awesome for that. So you guys are rocking it. So we
Yeah.
appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you guys for that. Okay, hold on.
But as he's sort of figuring out the giveaway picker, I think it's going to be one of the typical ones where it's going to pick a YouTube comment or whatever situation it is there. Okay, there we go. Nice.
Okay, can you see this?
Yes.
Does it say start raffle and pick winner? Can you?
Yep.
Okay,
It's
cool.
all good.
All right. All right. Good luck, everybody. Let's. Oh, whoops.
Okay, so just a little heads up. Whoever wins this, I think you're going to enjoy it. Now, I'm not going to make any guarantees and say that it's going to be really valuable, but I promise it's probably going to be something you're going to want to keep in your personal collection just because it's pretty cool. You're going to like whatever it is. So, shout out to you guys. Thank you so much for commenting below. As he's picking the comment here, he's got to figure out, you know.
All right, here we go. Here we go.
Math.
Max Potion.
Woo, let's go, Max.
Max Potion, great stream as always, Retro Fire. Appreciate you, Max. If you were watching this, you know, reach out to me on Instagram. I'll try to find you on Instagram, but I will comment, or I will respond to your comment rather, and try to get a hold of you to get your shipping information so I can send out the mystery bag to you. So appreciate everybody for commenting. And again, congratulations, Max Potion.
Yeah, the last giveaway winner, I was able to just respond to the comment on the YouTube, and then they messaged me on Instagram after the comment of the response and found me, and their name was similar, it's basically the same name, so it was a very obvious, like, okay, same person. So it was really easy to be able to figure it out. So definitely, if you're listening to this, thank you so much, Max Potion. I know that you've commented on some of my videos before, so I think that you probably will see it on this. So hopefully you do. And if so, you know, reach out to either me or Retro, and I will put you in contact with them if you get in contact with me through this channel, and we'll get you the prize. But the last winner was in Europe. Shout out to Grand Party Pokemon, and that was fun. And while
$40 shipping, $45
yeah, and
shipping.
while you know, it's totally fine. The next giveaways may have a small stipulation of requiring being in the U.S. potentially, just you know, for somewhat obvious reasons. But thank you so much. Also, Grand Party Pokemon, who won the previous giveaway, your Christmas gift will be on the way. It's on its way. It just has to cross an ocean to get there. So thank you for your support as well. So definitely comment, follow on this video. We don't have a giveaway exactly planned yet, but in the future, we're probably going to do more. So if you like these types of things, you know, it's show your support by liking and commenting, and who knows, you might get entered into a giveaway you didn't even know was going sometime. It's yeah.
Yep. All right. Next. Crossfire.
Okay, so this is a good one because okay, hold on. I actually have to, you know, it's got to be Crossfire. I'm excited for what you're going to answer, or what the answer is to this Crossfire, because I've been planning this whole week as well as last week's one, and I didn't get the answer. I'm quite excited. So, you want to start first, or you want me to start first?
I'll go first.
freaking soundbite, dude.
Yeah,
That's soundbite, bro.
it's a it's like the bass. It's the bass for me. All
It's
right.
just so cringy too, like the
Yeah,
sound quality.
it's very cringe, but we're sticking with it. We're too deep. We're too deep at this point. I feel like to go without it. But okay, so my question, like I kind of, well, no, I don't want to add a caveat. Okay, so you hypothetical situation, you can't like moving forward, you couldn't buy or sell any card, sports, TCG, nothing. Like you're donezo in the card game. Okay. Moving forward, first part of the question, how are you going about liquidating your collection or remaining inventory most effectively to where you feel like you would get the most out of it? And then second, what are you pivoting into? Are you still a reseller? Are you pivoting into a career? What are you doing? So again, first part, how do you liquidate your inventory collection most effectively? And then second, how do you pivot?
Okay, that's a good one. I was actually just thinking about this the other day as I was sorting some cards because I had so many cards that are just like, they're not like bulk cards, but they're also not like $2, $3 cards, like between $1 and $3 each. Like, and it's just so much stuff that is not really going to gain value. It's also probably only losing value, honestly, because it's like GXs, Vs, VMAXs, these types of things that, like, what are you going to do? What am I going to do with that? I can't just like put it all in auction in like a box. What am I going to take a picture of every single card, or like take a picture of a big giant box from 10 feet up and show the whole thing, but then you don't see it. So like, it got me thinking, like, how would I even go about if I wasn't some reseller, if I didn't have some sort of like big brain plan to like grade out the good thing, sell the other stuff in the binder, and if I wasn't cycling this stuff out like I am, what would I do to just get out of it? And like, there aren't very many options for something like the type of collection that someone like me has. Sure, I can get rid of my sealed stuff, like my inventory behind me, like all my ETBs and all my like booster boxes. And that stuff's easy because there's like suggested retail prices for those types of things. But when you break it down, you get into like this stack of cards that I have in front of me right here, like this kind of stuff, like Radiance, V's. Like, I can't just throw this in a bulk box. You know what I mean? If I did, it's going to get 25 cents if I'm lucky a card for something like that. But I also can't very well just get rid of it or like send it to auction, because there's no auction house that's going to individually auction each of those things off and get market value for it, or even has a platform for it. James isn't going to do it. Shout out to Z&G Emporium, my favorite auction platform right now. Dan's not going to do it. He's not going to take those cards and put it on his buy it now, and do. And you can't put this $3 card in the eBay vault and let it sit in someone's buy it now. I can't
Wait,
consign that for someone. So
real quick, side note on James. He did that video talking of like where he, first of all, James, please bring your videos back. I know you're
he
doing
started
new.
recently.
No. I mean, like, bring his old content back because he
Oh.
deleted all of it. Please bring
Oh.
that stuff back. There is so much good. Like, some of those lives you did with Cam are legendary. Some of your old videos packed with knowledge. Please bring that stuff back. But I thought it was funny that he did that video saying, like, hey, we're probably going to lose subscribers because, we're this channel is going to be different now. It's not going to be as card focused. It's going to talk more about the business and the growth and all that kind of stuff, day in the life kind of vlogging. And I don't know about everybody else, but me personally, I'm like, dude, like, I'm super pumped for that. Like, I've watched I watch all of his videos anyways, but like, I'm super pumped. I really enjoy like listening to him talk about that, like the trials, tribulations, all that sort of stuff. He's really transparent. So
I didn't know he took off the old content. That's
yeah, he took off the old stuff, and I mean I get it because it's like kind of a new path, but like
that's a play out of your book. That's basically a
I
Giovanni
know
play.
that was that was my comment. I was like, you didn't have to pull a retrospects, dog. Like, come on, man. But yeah, James, shouts out to you, man. Super excited to see where things go moving forward. Loving the content. You just talking to the camera for 15 minutes, showing the business, talking about the business. It's great. So yeah, sorry for
So,
cutting you off.
but anyway, we can't just send to James, right? A collection like the type of thing I have. So
Yeah,
like,
especially not all the raw or the sealed. Like, yeah,
right, and then all the graded, the various different things, the random magazines, and like I have sealed, sealed vintage stuff too, like
sealed
weird.
Southern Island set.
I mean, it's like these types of things. Like, it's like, what are you
That's
gonna?
fire. That's fine. I like stuff like that.
No, straight. Everyone does. I have like this signed, sealed to be a master by Jake and Jason Page CD from the '90s.
Wait, does he sing that?
Yes, he sings several songs on this. He sings a
What?
couple of them. Yeah, he's
Damn.
the
Okay,
main.
I actually kind of like that one. I think better than the original theme song. That might be blasphemy, but
Nah, you and everyone else, man. That thing, the Road to Cerulean City slaps on that freaking album. That song slaps, and so I
that's
had to
actually a
get it.
cool CD. I didn't even know that existed. That's pretty dope. I'm not mad at that.
It's my personal collection. So like, there's things that like I wouldn't know how to liquidate or even have a desire to. But the question is, what would I do if I had to? So I guess what I would do is I'd go to someone who is so ingrained, and so there are two different answers I'd give. If it was me with the knowledge I have, but I'm just not allowed to sell it myself, I would easily be able to find somebody who I think would be comparable and get a better rate. And probably I would go and consign it to a person who I knew would have the depth of knowledge, the time, and the wherewithal to be able to actually sell through it and get somewhat decent value. But that would be hard to do. I'd have to go to collecticons. I have to scour YouTube. I'd have to scour Instagram, go through my contacts and find the person that I thought was right to do that. I think I could think of a few people that I could probably go to and do it now, but I don't think that's the point of the question. And so the other answer is like, what would someone do if it wasn't me? If it was like my
if you could sell it yourself, like what? How
oh,
would you go about it? Like, what
okay,
would
well,
you
I
do?
would find a consigner. I would find a consigner who would specifically, I'd probably find multiple consigners and I would break my collection up into chunks that were easily broken apart in like sealed in one,
So
singles in
you
another.
wouldn't do the work yourself. You think it'd be more worth your time to
Well,
take a
I
little
thought
less.
that it was something like I had to liquidate it to someone else to sell. It
No,
wasn't.
no, no. You can sell it. Like you can sell it, but like, what are you doing to go about it? Are you just slowly selling it on eBay and at shows until it gets down to zero, or like, are you trying to like fire sale it? Like, what? That's more what I was getting at. Like, if you had such
Okay,
a
so
large
okay, fair
position,
enough. I was
yeah, and it's not like
misunderstanding the
a
question a little bit. Yeah.
yeah, it's not like a recycling inventory. It's like whatever you have right now, that's it forever. You have to figure out how to maximize getting the most out of it.
No, and I got that part about it. It's just okay, but I guess so. What I would do to sell everything just to liquidate it and get the maximum amount and to do it quickly, I would probably I would do the same thing. I would chunk it out into separate pieces. Like I'd get the sealed separated, I would get the singles separated, and then I'd get the slabs separated. And I would then send the slabs all to consignment to auction, basically, to get the quickest liquidation possible. Just whatever market price was, unless it was all the same slab, then I would break it up. But if it's just a multitude of things, I'd just send it all to auction. And I'd use someone, shout out to James, I'd use Z&G Emporium for that. I think he'd get the best rate. I wouldn't do it on my own eBay. I then would take the sealed and I would try to move it to some sort of like a streamer, someone who's going to rip it, someone who's going to get the most value out of it, so then I can get closer to market on it, because the sealed stuff is easier to get closer to market on. So I don't need to auction that either. And then like with the singles, I would find a live streamer once again who would run singles as far as like either a consignment lot or someone that I'd go to shows and I would sit down at one of those booths where they sit there and give you a percentage for all your cards. I just dump all my singles on someone like that probably, or I'd find a consigner who'd then stream it and then they'd take a percentage, and then whatever it was, I would find the right one for that. So that would be my personal me today. If I didn't want to move it myself and put in all the work, which with a large collection, and if I wanted to move on to do something else, which is the second part of the question, I think is the point. So like if I wanted to just do that, I would let someone else do it, but multiple people, and I would do it that way as described. The second part of the question what would I pivot into, or would I continue? Would I just get right back into it? Is that what you asked, basically?
Well, not like would you, because you can't, it can't be cards anymore, but would you
Okay.
look into becoming a reseller of something else? Or would you pivot back into maybe like, food, wine, cheese, a career? Like what would you
With
pivot
a
into?
large chunk of money in my hand after selling everything and getting out of one particular profession and moving to another, I've always sort of thought people are going to laugh at this. People are going to laugh in the comments. It's just funny, but there's always something that I've said was inevitable, and it's death and taxes. That's obvious, but there's something else that's also inevitable in that scheme that people don't talk about. It's poverty. And in the poverty cycle, what will always exist is poor people. And poor people will always need to do laundry or get vending machines. So I would probably pivot into some sort of a passive income type situation where I would own vending machines or a laundromat. I would focus on selling things to the poor, because the poor,
Damn,
unfortunately,
okay, the old capitalist shop for real.
what? Like,
I'm
honestly,
not, I'm not
your
mad
best
at you. I just
customer
like
is the poor. You have the poor people are honestly most corporations' best customers. And it's not because they're poor, it's because they're oftentimes ill-informed and they don't have as many choices in front of them. And so they're forced to take sort of the less good option, which is oftentimes, unfortunately, being fed to them by capitalists or corporations who are just put. So I would like to be selling to the poor because it's something that I know is a tried and true method that works. And I believe I could offer something like vending machines, something that's already being offered, that's just a
yeah,
passive thing.
ATMs or something
Yeah,
like.
yeah, it's that type of that's what I'd pivot into. I'd pivot into something where you'd basically, it's like you'd put up a large, you'd have to buy your machines, you'd have to have a large amount of capital income to begin with to get it started. But then once you do that, you kind of, I mean, you put in, you could eventually hire someone, So I've already thought about this, and it's something that if I had a lot of time and effort and I wanted to do, I probably should do, but it's just nothing I ever did. But I already, yeah, I'd do vending machines and I'd cater to selling to the poor. That's what I do.
I actually like that. I think that that's interesting. My uncle used to work for, when he got out of the military, he worked for, I think the company is called Sugarloaf, but they're the company that stocks the claw machines, that runs like all the claw machines with like the plushies and stuff in them.
Something like that, like
Dude,
arcades or
those
arcade
companies
machines. Yeah,
rent money like on those claw machines. Like they make so, because the cost of goods is so low, right? To buy all those plushies, and you're not winning every time. In fact, most of the time people aren't winning, right?
yeah,
Like I mean, yeah, very, very
the
high
racket.
profit margin business. So I actually like that. That's it. I would have not expected that out of you at all, but I like that. I'm not mad at that.
It's something I've often thought about, and I've always told, over the pandemic, I was so close to buying a vending machine and starting another business and getting another business license and just starting up another thing. My biggest reason why I didn't is because I don't have a garage, or I don't have a storage facility. I don't have somewhere large that inevitably whatever you're selling out of whatever machine or automated machine that you're using is going to break down, and you're going to have to bring it home and fix it. And so when those types of things happen, and when you have parts and things you need to have around and tools and stuff, it just doesn't work out in like California where I'm at, when I'm at where I'm at specifically right now. So I never did it, but it's something I've oftentimes thought about. It's like whether it's like a laundromat situation, which is like the top of the, in my opinion, the top of the cream of the crop is the laundromat, but that requires a lot more. You have to have like a brick. It's like the brick and mortar versus selling from home as a flipper. You know what I mean? Which is like the vending machine. You just put it in front of a gas station and pay them $50 a month for rent to put the vending machine there, and call it a day or whatever it is, and then go collect on it once every couple of weeks and refill it. So
I like that. I like that. All
it's
right, what's your crossfire?
mine is not nearly as like business oriented. It's more of it is going back to our roots and our core a little bit though, and getting back to like, this is going to get at who you are as a person a little bit, who Nick, who retrospects the person is. It's not about cards, but it is about nerd culture. So you the
Okay,
viewers will
okay.
be happy to hear it's somewhat on theme. But I was watching recently. I watched this show called Echo. Right, it was on the Marvel Spotlight. It was a new Marvel Netflix or Disney Plus series, and I finished the series. And honestly, like I was a little bit underwhelmed by it. I really wanted to I wanted to like it because the character is really cool. I saw her in Hawkeye, and I wanted the expansion of like that story more, but it left me a little bit underwhelmed with the powers that they, and I don't want to say what the powers are per se without because it'll spoil it. I don't want to, well, it won't spoil it because at the end of the show, I was left wondering, like, what are her powers? Like, what are the powers? You still didn't know at the end of the show. So, and then I heard it wasn't getting like renewed for potentially another season because didn't have a lot of interest. So it was just a shame to see how it didn't really live up to what I thought it could be or should have been. But it got me thinking in our like for Crossfire, it really got me thinking what would Nick, what superpower would Nick, or what supervillain, what sort of thing, like it could be Marvel, DC, if you could have any power or any ability or mutant, whatever it is, with the caveat that in order to get that power, you had to go through whatever the character was so you had to go through the origin story. And I don't mean like the Spider-Man Uncle Ben origin story. I mean, you had to get bit by a radioactive spider. You didn't have to lose your uncle to become Spider-Man. That is sort of his canon thing that happens. So I don't want to get into like whether or not you have to go into canon events, but imagine the question that if you could have any superhero or supervillain or cosmic being's power in the universe, but it has to be someone in the comics that we know that's like it could be a lesser known, but they have to be a real comic book character. What would that character's power, which one would you choose? But you have to also take their origin story too.
Yeah, that one's tough because the power is fun to think about, but like the origin stories a lot of the time are traumatic, like very traumatic. Very traumatic.
And then I guess to further go on to that question, when you choose, would that make you a hero or a villain after accepting would that origin story then turn you into the villain or the hero? Because oftentimes the origin story determines what they are, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. I really liked X-Men for that reason because it kind of dove into, you know, and like when X-Men was originally written, it was sort of like an allegory for the civil rights movement. You know, like Malcolm X was Magneto and Professor X was Martin Luther King, and you know, Stan Lee did a really good job at sort of like, you know, making a parallel to that. So I really enjoy X-Men for that reason. But again, obviously, like very traumatic time in the country as well as the things that happened in the comic books. This is a good one. I think. Damn.
I even had a hard time answering my own question after I thought it up.
Yeah,
I had a hard time.
Because like I go to the power, but then again, like the origin is so traumatic. Like my favorite superhero is you know, Deadpool, but his origin story is like he gets cancer and then goes through like experimental you know, treatment for it or whatever, and it kind of goes wrong. And so I don't know about that one. I think maybe like probably like the least traumatic I could think of is like Green Lantern, because I think the idea of like Green Lantern sort of, you're the protector of like a certain universe area, and then you pass on the Green Lantern ring to the next Green Lantern, and then they sort of take over the protection. I think that would probably be the least traumatic. The power isn't as cool to me. I mean, it's cool, obviously, but I think it's just the trauma that I couldn't get past, because I think if I wanted to have a power, I think like invisibility, like being able to become invisible would be pretty cool. But when I think of like Miss Fantastic, they like went to space, the space thing went wrong or whatever, and like that would just be, I'm already all set on going to space, but then like something goes wrong in space, hell no. Like
I
I'm
get
all
messed up on planes when there's turbulence. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
like that would scare the hell out of me. So I don't know about that one, but yeah, I think Green Lantern probably because it's like least traumatic, and I mean like it's kind of cool too because he's like normal in real life. Like you don't know that he's Green Lantern, all the time, and like he sort of has the lantern like hidden at his house. So I think that one would be cool, but I think invisibility would be sweet because yeah, dude, we could talk about this forever. We could talk about this forever, but yeah,
That's interesting
probably.
you say invisibility because that's not one I rank very highly on my powers chart. Not at all.
Well, it's more like what I could do with it. Like I think it would be cool to like
Ayo.
go like sneak into like a meeting at like BlackRock or Vanguard and see like what they were planning or like what sorts of types of meetings go on and then be able to trade the markets with sort of like insider information. Like I
I
think
just
that
watched
would be kind of
X-Men 2 and Mystique was all about like infiltrating governments by like shape changing and stuff.
yeah,
And
I
that's what
forgot
gives me
about
that
that.
vibes.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That was pretty cool.
X-Men's
So
got so many cool powers in it. Like they did such a good job with like the powers and the different like
yeah.
like mutants and stuff.
Well, and it's all like coming of age too, and like they're teenagers trying to deal with the fact that they're getting these powers, which is kind of like its own little maybe like allegory for puberty or something like that. Yeah, X-Men's really well done. I think once I think the license for X-Men is kind of in limbo right now, but I think once they pick that back up, like a really well done. I'm not even mad at the 2000s movies, but like a really well done X-Men like trilogy, I think would be really good. I still need to watch Logan. Swami always talks
What?
really.
You haven't seen Logan? I
I haven't
watched
seen
that 2 days
Logan.
ago. It's such a good it's a great movie. You need to watch.
Yeah,
I rewatched it 2 days ago.
I need to watch that one.
Yeah, I've
So
been on an X-Men kick lately, so maybe that's where my head goes to or something. But they are actually rebooting the X-Men cartoon series. It's called X-Men
oh really?
97,
Okay.
and it's going to be like a continuation from the one we grew up on, the cartoon that we grew up on from the
Yeah,
90s.
that cartoon is good. Like
Yeah,
the Spider-Man
they're making
90s
more of that.
cartoon is goated. The Batman 90s cartoon is goated. Dude, honestly,
The
like
wide, the chin, the Batman who's got a chin the size of like a brick.
yeah, it's just good. Like the story is good. Like, dude, I used to love all that stuff. Justice League Unlimited. Like, I was obsessed with that. Static Shock. I watched all of that. Like,
I never
that.
saw Static Shock until later on in life. One of my good friends in high school, he's like, "Yeah, my favorite superhero is Static Shock," and I was like, "I know." I was like, "I know a lot of superheroes, but I'd never heard of him." And I looked into him. He's super cool. Like he's actually got some really cool comics and things and other. He had a show too, right?
Yeah, I was on Cartoon Network when I was a kid. I watched tons of that. I think actually Swami has this really cool cover. I don't know if it's like a limited cover, but there's a lot of really sick comic art for Static Shock too. But yeah. Anyways, all right. Speaking of introspective, emotional, personal feelings, do you want to get into the next topic?
Yeah. So you would choose, but you would choose Green Lantern or
I
Invisible.
think I think so. I just like I can't. If I had more time to think about it, but like we're already like 45 minutes. It's just the trauma to get a lot of these powers is so intense that I'm
Mhm.
kind of like wussing out. Like I don't know. Like I
So
don't.
that's what's holding you back is the trauma aspect.
Yeah,
That's what's
I think
really key.
so.
I knew that would be a caveat for some people on the question. Which it's yeah,
Yeah,
I
the
could
trade offs are rough. The trade offs are rough. So
tell us below what you would be,
yeah,
which
yeah,
superpower
yeah.
you would take or super villains, whatever it is, and tell us if you could handle the origin story or not. That was a good one though. That was definitely a good one. Okay, but you said it. I don't know. I prepared myself enough for this. We alluded to it a little bit, but yeah, just a quick one. We both watched Pokemon Concierge over the last few weeks, and I just watched it, so we can finally talk about it. But I shed a tear. I will actually say it's, and that's not something for me that happens really. Like, and it was that damn Pikachu that, I mean, you guys, without saying it much else, but dang, guys, you guys got to watch Pokemon Concierge. But what did you think about the whole thing, Nick? I know we touched a little bit on it last week, but we couldn't really talk about it. But now that I've actually watched it, I want to hear what your take is.
I cried at the exact same episode, so I'm interested to hear why. Like, what hit about it for you? Like, what
So
specifically?
I want to be delicate about this because I don't want to spoil anything for anyone watching. You know what I mean? So that's the only thing I want. So maybe what we could do is, if you're going to listen to this and you haven't watched Pokemon Concierge yet, skip this part and go until the next little scrolling bar where the next topic is, should Pokemon be more than just a hobby? When you see that scrolling, we will not be talking about Pokemon Concierge. So I
Yeah,
don't want to
that's good.
spoil it for anyone who hasn't. So this is forewarning. But that being said, the episode, the ending of Pokemon Concierge is what really got me specifically. And it was just like the show was very cutesy and like it was very like feely. It was in the fields. It wasn't about battling. It was more about like fitting in and finding your place. And like the main character already was on like this journey basically of like trying to find her place. And like at the end, you just meet this like character, and like they did such a good job of like telling the story of this Pikachu who didn't quite fit in. And basically, it just, was a beautiful rendition of a story in life that you see played out constantly, but it's oftentimes played out in a trope that's expected, or it's insincere, or you kind of roll your eyes at it and kind of move on. But for somehow, some way, it was done in such a way that it actually made my cold dead heart feel something. So I don't know if that was why for you or what you're feeling, but that was sort of my take on like why it hit. It's because of such the sincerity in which the message that it was delivering was actually delivered.
Was there any like sort of personal, like, would you say it's just something you've seen before in real life, or would you say like you personally connected with the message of it, or?
It legitimately made me think of my cat. Like the Pikachu, I have a cat that's just, he's not a normal cat. Like, he's not good at doing cat things. Like, I love him. He's sweet. And he has so much love to give, and he's a great cat, but he's not good at cleaning himself, so he needs to be brushed. Like, he's just scared of everything, which I guess you think cats are kind of skittish anyway, but he's really scared. He's very nervous. He's kind of clumsy and clunky, even though he's a kitty. He's supposed to be like agile, and he's not the normal cat, and he doesn't fit in, and people oftentimes see that, and they don't give him the time of day, and they don't like get to know him, and like they don't ever get to see that he's a great cat. And like, so it was just like, it was a very touching story because it made me think of my cat, like the Pikachu, because the Pikachu is just not really a normal Pikachu. He's not really great at being a Pikachu, really. But it's like it shows like that played out, and like how its owner kind of and it's just like a really touching story. So I guess it was kind of personal for me, but for like one of my pets more than anything.
Yeah, that's good. That makes sense. I think for me, like it was more holistic, and then the Pikachu sort of like message was just the cherry on top. Like I'm very, like, some people are just left brain or just right brain, and I'm like a balance of both. Like I have a creative side, but I'm also like very logical, black and white, like numbers, finance, business, all that sort of stuff. And most of the time in my life, I've let that side of me dominate because, like, you got to get through life. Like, you got to pay the bills. Like, you can be idealistic or you can be realistic. And the whole show was kind of about like this girl who was like trying to be this like model employee and trying to figure out like what she needed to do to be the perfect employee. And they were just kind of like, hey, just like go have fun, like see what you can do to make the Pokemon have fun, and don't really stress it and all that kind of stuff. And then of course like the Pikachu like not really fitting in with the other Pikachus. And for me it just kind of like, you know, I haven't really had the chance to like go back and watch too much of the anime or interact with Pokemon like since I've been back in the hobby, outside of just, you know, buying and selling cards. And obviously like what I do is 100% business focused. Like I don't really think about collecting or anything like that. And so I think what like really hit for me was the fact that like I take this stuff so seriously and work so hard at like building the business. But when I take a step back and look at it, it's a blessing to be able to do something that allows me to reconnect with my childhood with something as simple as Pokemon, which is, you know, cute little monsters and you know, all the stories that go along with it and stuff like that. And just kind of like remembering that even though this is a business, I am financially driven, that, you know, like the nostalgia is still there. And yeah, like I don't want to get too personal with it, but again, like I just so often like let my business side dominate everything else. And so I think the message of like taking a breath and sort of just like remembering to enjoy the journey and enjoy the fact that like this is Pokemon, this is something fun and creative and cutesy. Um, Combined with the fact that that Pikachu episode was just like a tearjerker in general, I think it all just kind of was a perfect storm for me. And yeah, I shed a tear. My girlfriend and I both were crying at the end of that episode. So it was a good, really good show. I'm really sad it was only 4 episodes. I hope they do more of it in the future. But yeah, that's my little rant. So
Yeah, it's I think the message of it is very much so something that comes a little bit later in life for a lot of people. It's like that you kind of have to slow down and like look at the ride, because oftentimes when you're on the ride of life, you're so focused on the destination, or you're sort of focused on what happened before, sort of you lose track of like the in-betweens. But like even something so simple as like flying on a plane, you know what I mean? Like that's something that I as a child would always just not really think anything about. I'd go and fly from my parents from like California to Nevada. My mom lived in Vegas for a while. And I would look out the plane. I wouldn't even look at the what I was seeing down below. It wasn't like something that appealed to me as a beautiful thing or whatever. But like until recently, when I was an adult, I started flying again, and I started looking out the window and conquering my fear of flying. Getting over the fear part, that's a whole nother thing. But like I actually started like paying attention to what was out there and like seeing the landscape and like looking at like, oh, that's part of California, you know, and seeing where things change. And it's just you slow down and you start to enjoy the ride a little bit more. And you realize, I think, that the destination, we're all going to the same place. We're all going to the same place. Some of us get there a little earlier than others, you know. So it doesn't matter the destination as much, since we're all eventually going there. It's what matters is the ride. And it's often something that I typically will say when, you know, mortality starts getting to me. But everybody dies. Not everybody truly lives. And so I find that it's not something to stress about dying, you know. I stress more about making sure that while I'm living, I'm experiencing things, because what else, you know, in life, what else is there but that? You know, family and making sure those are all things that are important, but that's a part of the experience. So slowing down, like concierge was the message, was about slowing down, I think. And that's something that comes a little bit later in life when you realize like we're going to live a long life. You're going to experience a lot of things. There's no rush to get to the end per se. You should, you know, try to enjoy it just along the journey. Then, and I very much so feel that way too.
yeah, and I mean like especially, you know, bringing it back to like cards and Pokemon and all that kind of stuff. Like I feel like over you know, 2019 through 2022, that time period was so crazy and intense that it was tough for people, like you said, to sort of enjoy the ride because everything was just so fast moving. Everything was crazy, prices going all over the place. People were trying to like find their place and couldn't really like, it was tougher to just enjoy the ride. Now that things have calmed down a little bit and it's more like stable and sustainable, I think now is like a time that people can actually enjoy what's going on and not feel so stressed out about things, not have to worry about, oh, if I go to Target, there aren't going to be any packs, or I have to compete with like 45 other people just to get a pack. Like it's a time now where people can actually like sit and enjoy. And to your point about, you know, flying and stuff, it's like most of the trips that you've taken, I mean, I know you've gone to Disney and stuff like that, and but most of the trips you've taken are because like you're going to sell cards, right? And so like you're being able to experience like these beautiful views and go and meet new people and have food at different restaurants and experience different cultures and different states and things like that, because you get to sell some or interact, buy, sell, trade in something that you enjoyed as a kid. And so it's like this full circle sort of situation. And if you told your kid self, like, hey, you're going to be able to enjoy the finer things in life because of cards, you probably couldn't process that as a kid. But now that you're older, you can really sit and think about like, wow, like I've been able to do all these awesome things off of something like, you know, cards, which is kind of crazy. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's really nice to see shows about Pokemon coming out that are a little bit more wholesome and a little bit more like, you know, about that side of the life side of Pokemon, not about the like battling side, because well, little kid me only cared about the battling side of Pokemon and everything like that. The real life, you know, adult me realizes that there's some very interesting stories to tell there that can, I hope they expand on. So, yeah, hopefully, if you guys, you know, tell us down below if you liked Pokemon Concierge. Hopefully, we didn't spoil anything and you've already watched it by this time. And if you haven't watched it, you skipped this part and then you come back and watch it after the fact. But yeah.
All right. Get into the meat and potatoes main topic.
Yeah, and this is one that maybe we should expand upon a little bit before we get really too much into it. But like I was driving home the other day, back from my distributor, and something I was watching someone, some YouTube video somewhere, and it was about like cards. And the YouTube creator, I forget who it was, but it wasn't someone I typically watch. But they were like ranting and raving about how like cards shouldn't be an investment and that they should just be a hobby. And that like before Hidden Fates and like the craziness that was like that $10,000 Charizard or whatever, Pokemon card collecting was just that. It was just collecting, binder collecting. A couple people graded. If they did grade, you weren't grading for a ton of value. You just wanted to get a 10. And if you got a 9, you lost money, kind of how it is now. And it was not necessarily like a big flipping culture. It was just a hobby. And so that all changed. And so the Pokemon YouTuber I was watching was ranting and raving about that like change of culture and mentality. And he was saying that people who buy things like sneakers, like, you know, a raft for like river rafting or a canoe, like literally anything you buy in retail. Traditionally, you don't think like, okay, can I go and take this and resell it for half the value back? Or am I going to get money back on this investment after I use it and have my fun with it and stuff? And that's what Pokemon is fun. It's like a game, a card game. And that's traditionally what it's looked at when you're just buying a pack to rip a pack at Target. It's supposedly fun. But now it's more of an investment, is what it's sort of the lens it's looked at through a lot of things. And so Josh, driving home, listening to this on my AirPods, like listening, thought to myself, should Pokemon be any more than just a dumb hobby that you expect to lose 100% of what you spend on it? Like, are we and have we gotten really, really spoiled or like accustomed to what it was like during the pandemic and during like the selling and booming of Pokemon, where everyone got into flipping it, that like now that's all we see it as, and that how a lot of people see it as, and we can't get back from that. And is that what it should be? So that's where my thought was at. That's what this whole topic is, and that's what I threw at Nick. I said, Nick, what do you think? Should people even be like buying, selling, trading, and doing all this like investing and stuff in it and flipping? Or should it just be like a regular, like old, just cards, just game pieces or whatever? So I want to know your take on this, and I guess I can expand a little bit more. But
yeah, so well, first of all, I do think, and like I know Mason is kind of said, and a lot of people have said this, but like most people interacting with this are like, we are in a very niche part of the community. I mean, there's millions and millions of people, maybe billions, I don't know, that are into this hobby. And a majority of them, it's very surface level. It's just a hobby, which is why videos like this get the sort of attention that they do. And like PokeRev and Leonhard and those kind of channels are the most prevalent. And there is some sort of monetary value, prices jump up on screen, we're trying to pull the chase card, like there is some of that to those videos too. But I think a lot of people, if they pull the chase card, they just like they'll think, oh wow, like I just pulled a $200 card, but they are just going to keep it. They're not necessarily going to sell it just because it's $200. They just go, oh cool, that's cool, I pulled an expensive card, I saw PokeRev pull this and he said it's worth $200, so cool, I just pulled a $200 card. I think that, like when I I used to be in a lot of Discord groups and, would be in Discord calls or whatever. And I was always very financially focused with this from the beginning. And I remember people used to talk about like investor versus collector, flipper versus collector. And, that was a huge topic for a while and all that sort of stuff. And I mean, I remember like being in these groups and talking to people, and they would kind of say like, we don't want to talk about like the business and the flipping all the time. Like it takes the fun out of it for me. And since then, a lot of those people have sort of like changed their tune. And now like a lot of people are flipping, right? And whether that's like necessity because like they need the money, they
we're a
overspend.
flipper podcast too, so I mean,
Yeah, they're trying to fund the hobby, or whether that's just like the opportunity because there's opportunity to be made flipping, like whatever. Like I'm not trying to be like, oh, I was the only one flipping, because that's definitely not the case. But like when I was always very, very financially focused about it, and that wasn't the sentiment. And over the past couple of years, a lot of people that were like full on collector are now talking about like, oh, I made all these sales, I bought a label printer, I did all this stuff. And that's fine. Like I'm not mad at people who are trying to be like, my way is the right way at all. And when we talk about
we've
our
in
next,
fact advised a lot of those people to probably do that on the podcast. We've sort of given those pieces of like, hey, you should do this and stuff, which is funny that we're having a conversation.
For sure. And I mean, like looking back on it, I was definitely, because one thing you have to accept is not everybody is going to interact with things the way that you interact with them, and not everybody's going to have the same goals as you. So like looking back on the way I talked to a lot of people, or a lot of the things I said about people who were collecting or whatever, I regret. And I definitely was harsh or more like rude about just the way I went about talking about that kind of stuff. I think it's fine to collect. I think that people can get a lot of enjoyment. I've seen people get a lot of enjoyment. And ironically, some of my favorite content actually is collector content. Like I watch this podcast called NSDC. It's like non-sport diecast. It's these guys, they do a lot of Marvel stuff. They show comics, they show Marvel cards, they collect a lot of different types of stuff. Very, very little of that podcast is about flipping, almost none of it. And like I watch every episode that those guys put out. I Everybody has different goals. I don't think it's realistic and everybody has different, for some people, they're like, I don't get enjoyment out of it just being a business. Me, like I've run businesses my entire life. I've built businesses my entire life. The way I'm built, the way I operate, like that is fun to me. I get a lot of enjoyment out of figuring out how to make a business work, how to grow a business, but not everybody's going to get that. And I think that I pushed that mindset on a lot of people, and I regret that. And I think that it's unfair, and that a lot of people do just want, and you know, some people are like, well, I don't want to grade certain types of cards. I only want to grade cards that I really enjoy or that I really think are cool. And that's fine. Like that might not be like the way to have the biggest business or, you know, things like that. But if that's what gives you enjoyment and that's what makes you feel fulfilled, like that's absolutely fine, you know? And I think that, yeah, maybe some of the time, like the way I talked about that might have been like rude or putting people down or whatever. But I think whatever your goals are, whatever gives you the most enjoyment, that's what's going to be most sustainable. It's when you try to get out of your lane or try to do things that you think you should be doing. I think that's where you get burnout. And I think that's where you get to the point to where it doesn't become fun for you anymore. So I think for people, you should do whatever is most fun to you and whatever feels most sustainable for you personally. Like there can't really be a one size fits all answer. But to the question of should Pokemon be more than just a hobby, for most people it needs to just be a hobby, because if it wasn't, then there would be no market, right? If everybody was just selling, there was no interest in just buying, holding, collecting, things like that, with no interest in like future resale value, the hobby would kind of collapse on itself, right? And we've seen that in other hobbies or other collectibles. So yeah, kind of a rant, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think what you said is very true about more people need to see it as a hobby than as a business in order for the hobby to really be able to continue to grow and not just sort of crash and burn. And that's something that we're going to see in the next topic. We're going to a little bit of it too, or maybe it bleeds a little bit into this one. But I think that right now what we're seeing is there are far more sellers than there are buyers of specifically graded cards. I think that the market in general is very strong, but what we're seeing right now, some weakness in, is slab pricing, and especially graded, like high grade modern cards that are like race to the bottom kind of thing. You're seeing less liquidity and a lot less profits being taken, and basically just breaking even on a lot of these PSA 10s is what people are doing just to get out of them right now. And that's simply because, not because people don't want them, not because they're not beautiful, not because PSA is grading easy now or anything, or harder or anything weird like that, or there's less card. It's simply because there are more sellers than there are buyers, and there are more people grading for financial benefit than they are for their own collections. Like when I grade 50 cards, there's not a single card of that 50 card that I'm going to PC. And I'll do that 5, 6 times. And I recognize that I'm a flipper. I'm not the usual Pokemon, but there's a lot of people just like me. And there are a lot of people who submit 50 cards and maybe one goes in their PC. And then when they get it and they eventually have it in their PC, they end up selling it. And so nobody is grading cards simply for the novelty of it. They're only going to grow this narrative that you grade your cards so that you can sell it more easily and get the most beneficial market value out of it. Because, like, what's better than selling a near mint raw card? A PSA 10 of that card, allegedly. But then sometimes when you look at the math with slabs, it's not actually, that's not the case. After the time, the effort, and then the grading costs, and then you factor in getting a couple of nines in that submission and that what that does for your profit margins, it very quickly doesn't become worth it. So I think, to answer the question, should Pokemon be more than just a hobby? As somebody who takes it as more than just a hobby and sees and interacts with a lot of other people who do as well, I don't think that it should be more than a hobby. I think that it should just be what the question suggests, just a hobby for most people, like you said. I do think, though, that normal people should do more than what they are currently doing to learn how to liquidate some of what they consider their hobby. Because while I do agree that more people need to be in the hobby than the selling side, I think that what you said is also true, that most people in the hobby who buy a card and then get that $200 card, they say, cool. They know it's a $200 card. They know that they don't need it. They don't want it. Maybe it's a double even. Most of those people will never take it and sell it. And that's not because I think that they don't want to become a business or anything. And I don't think that everyone who sells a card needs to become a full-time Pokemon seller, you know? I think that there's an equal, like a nice equilibrium that we aren't at right now. It feels like everybody who sells Pokemon now is being pressured with to leave their real job if they sell a good amount of Pokemon and pursue Pokemon full time
Yeah,
because and then
100% agree, and I don't think that that's a good. I think
bad
Pokemon could be,
idea.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think Pokemon could be a cool wealth creation tool.
Yes.
I don't think, and I think that people just want to be like, oh, like I'm full time Pokemon because it sounds cool, but in reality, it's like, yeah, but maybe you're full time broke. You
Yeah.
know, like
So like
sure,
take it
you
from
know,
one
so
guy who's been full time Pokemon through from during the boom. I started my business so that I could actually buy from a distributor in 2019 when Hidden Fates was still around. So before the boom, technically, but I was still operating under my normal job. I worked for a winery for a year and a half while I had my Pokemon business running on the side. Then I decided to go, and it had a lot to do with the pandemic too. So this is coming from someone who does this full time. You want to keep your full-time job and do it on the side because it's just so hard to realistically be able to make it work in a situation where like we're in right now where liquidity isn't at its peak height. The market's strong, but it's not the strongest it's ever been. And it's also the economy has some things that are a little bit questionable that have been coming down the pipeline too. So it's just one of those things that I hate to see the narrative being driven to people that they should be doing this just because they're having some success with what they're doing, selling and flipping, because it's a totally different situation. So I think that's where I don't think we're at there. I don't think there is an equilibrium to be had in the hobby. I don't think we're there yet. I think there's still this rose colored like glasses that are viewed at like the Pokemon selling full time sort of thing, which don't get me wrong is fantastic. I love what I do. I absolutely, and like we said earlier, I feel blessed to be able to travel and be able to afford these things based solely. I have zero other income. I don't have a sugar mama. It's all based on Pokemon. Everything. I don't, you know, it's not, I haven't gotten unemployment for, you know, since the first 6 months of the pandemic when we shut down, you know what I mean? And that was very short lived. So it from someone who does it, it's not as glamorous as I think the YouTube wants you to think it is. But it's certainly something that I think that more people should interact with, selling just a few cards here and there and learning what it goes into it, because it's such a rewarding part of the hobby to be able to get money back from your cards, your investment, to think that like I could go and sell one of my jackets, my you know, my old Costco jackets that I've worn for a season for half value or even 65% value or whatever it is, and then get money back on it. Like I'm never going to wear that jacket again. Just like a lot of the cards that after you're done interacting with, you're probably never going to like look at again. So, you know, it's sorry for a bit of a rant, but that's all I have to say on that.
no, I think you made a good point, and we kind of talked about it. I don't know if it was last episode or maybe a couple episodes ago, but we talked about like putting yourself in a position to where you don't have to sell. If you're trying to like do this as a business and you're relying on this 100% and you're not otherwise like well capitalized, it's going to be very difficult for you to grow because you're going to be accepting best offers. You're going to take less than you should on some things. You're going to be needing to like sell stuff at a loss just to get money back so that you can pay your bills or whatever. And that's like, that's just not great, right? Like you look at a lot of the most successful businesses in the space and they were extremely well capitalized outside of Pokemon, and that allowed them to grow within Pokemon because they could afford to do things like hold on to, you know, like in the case of Z&G Emporium, right? I mean, obviously like Perfect Storm, you know, Panorama hit, Logan Paul was able to sell that box, but dude was able to buy base first edition boxes and sit on them because him and his wife are accountants. If he didn't have any other income, he had kids on the way, you know, and him and his wife were completely reliant on Pokemon, like chances are he might not have been able to hold that box to the point that he could sell it for $250,000, right? Same thing with Rusty, same thing with Dan, same thing with
Do you
Nick.
know
I
why
mean,
I don't have it's 6 cases of Evolving Skies behind me right now? Because I sold them when they were going up to 200, to 300, to 350. I sold Evolving Skies all the way up to like $280 a box that I was buying for $90 from my distribution. And that's because I had to sell, essentially, because I'm a business who has to keep product moving. You're taking double, triple profits on what you're buying from, you thinking it's good, but there's a reason why I don't have 6 cases behind me of $500 a box Evolving Skies. It's because you have to keep things moving. You
yeah,
can't
but
just.
you still got, 5-figure magic boxes. Yeah, you're chilling. You're doing just
We
fine.
don't. We don't talk about. We don't talk about what's behind me. Okay,
Yeah,
what's really behind me. All right.
you're doing just fine. But yeah, I just think, and it's like this stuff's not going anywhere. Like, why are you in a rush? I also, like, I don't want to be too harsh on people or whatever, or speak for people, but I think a lot of people that want to do this full time, it's not because they want to work harder. And I just say this from personal experience. When you run your own business, you're going to work harder than if you just went and got another job, because you're on the line for everything, right? When you show up to work, you just show up to work. That's it. If the company goes down, maybe you lose a job, but like your personal assets are fine, right? Like it's completely different when you run your own business. You're working harder, but the trade-off is that you're your own boss. Most people that want to go full-time Pokemon, it's because they hate their job and they don't want to work as hard. And they're like, well, I'm making money selling cards, so I can just like do that instead. And it's
Yeah,
like,
we won't
if
talk
you're
about
not
how many
spending,
hours I actually put in a week compared to what I used to. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
it's like, dude, if you're working a 40-hour work week and you're thinking you're going to go full-time Pokemon and be like, well, I'll just work a 20-hour work week now, like, good luck. You know
No,
what
you're
I'm
gonna have to
saying?
go
Like that,
80 to 100 hours, probably, is what more
yeah, like that,
realistically.
that, that's not yeah, it's just not the mindset to have going into it. But again, the trade-off is the stuff is fun. If you can find a way and it's still fun to you, then maybe working 80-hour weeks is fine to you because you're like, well, I really enjoy this. So it doesn't feel like as much of a grind. And like to the point, like when I'm like pre-grading cards, I don't sit and like look at the art and like sit and get enjoyment out of it. It's funny too, because like when you think about like how people get enjoyment or how people decide like what a grail is going to be, when you do it as a business, you think, oh well, this card is very hard to find in mint condition, it's very hard to grade, this is a grail for me. But the market doesn't always like think that way, right? Like we've seen cards with good fundamentals that are like hard to replace, like they haven't really done that well over the past few years. But as flippers, that's how you like give value to things. But me personally, as a business, like I like a lot of these really rare cards, Japanese promos, blah blah blah. But I'll look at like 151 cards. I mean, I talked about it to death, but like the Alakazam, when I first saw that card and got it in hand, I was like, damn, this is a good looking card. It's easy to replace. It's not rare. It's got pops in the thousands, but like I enjoy that. Like I enjoy seeing the new cards that come out. Like I'm still having fun doing that. I don't just get value out of things that are really hard to get. I still get value out of seeing new sets come out and seeing new cool arts and be like, whoa, this card's sick, getting it in hand, looking at all the details, the full art, the story the artist is trying to tell, whatever. That's still fun to me. But that's not fun for everybody. Some people only want really rare, really hard to find things, and that's fine. It's just finding like what's fun for you, like what makes it sustainable for you. So it's not a one size fits all thing for everybody. And it's okay if you like modern, don't like vintage, or you like vintage, don't like modern. Like that's okay. Or if you like a little bit of everything, like that's okay too. It's a hobby. Like enjoy it how you enjoy it. Don't get too caught up in like what other people are doing or what other people how they're enjoying it. Like at the end of the day, what's sustainable is what you find fun, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that it's one of those things that it's always good to reevaluate what you're collecting or what you're doing in the hobby. If you're not collecting, if you're just flipping, and like what you're doing and why you're doing it. Because, like, for me, for example, I'm not doing this per se to get rich. I'm doing it because I really enjoy doing it. Of course, during the pandemic, it was a much easier avenue of making money. It was much more uh, we'll say the profits were just booming quite a bit back then, but that's how everything was back then. Everyone, the money is flowing everywhere. It's like literally, you look anywhere, you fall, and you would have made money. Basically, if crypto, anything, literally, Beanie Babies were probably up back then, and so it's not really hard to believe that things have sort of cooled off and changed. But I think it's just good to reevaluate where you're at continuously in life and make sure that your goals are, aligned with what you're doing. Because if you're not in it to get rich, if you just want to have a good time and you can have a good time and make a living, which is sort of what I do with it, I'm quite satisfied with that. You know what I mean? So working more, like you said, like those 80-hour weeks doesn't feel so bad, though someone else might hear that and be like, that is crazy. I have my $100,000 a year desk job being an engineer, whatever it is that, makes X, Y, or Z. And I would never want to work more for less. That seems, even if it's something I love doing. So it's all about perspective, and it's always about perspective. So definitely just reevaluate, make sure that you're doing what you're doing because you like to be doing it, or it's your choice. And, I think you'll probably do fine. So it's a fun topic, but I think we beat it pretty good with that one.
Yeah, yeah. Last thing I would say is like to your point about the desktop, like you can keep both. Like you can
Yeah.
you can still do this. You can still make money on the side. Like I'm still not full time. I probably won't ever go full time. I mean, if this stuff stays strong for 5 more years and it scales to the point that I'm like, all right, it doesn't make sense for me to work in finance or do the consulting or other things that I'm doing or whatever, like maybe, but it's just like, wow, like I have time. I'm willing to work hard enough to run 3 businesses and to have the fun. And like, yeah, like I don't want to put myself in a position to where, I'm reliant on it, because that would take a lot of the fun out of it. And that would make me like really, really stressed out about it if I had to sell things that I knew were too cheap right now for less than what, they deserve to go for, things like I just, yeah, I don't want to be in that position. And I also don't want to put all my eggs in one basket. So, but I'm having
That being
fun.
said, though, it does lead into this next topic, what you just said.
Yeah, yeah,
People
yeah, yeah.
needing to sell and people not having backbones and the holidays and the combination of just literally all PSA unloading their
Perfect
whole
storm.
backlog.
Perfect
It's
storm.
everything together is just made slab prices just literally, hello darkness, my old friend. It's one of those things that, as someone who grades a lot, I just look at some of the race to the bottom of some of the things even I've been grading, and I say I don't like to grade stuff that's a race to the bottom. Like classic collection, English classic collection cards are the number one biggest culprit of what is crashing, or maybe didn't, I won't say crashing because they were never high to begin with. That $400 box that I and everyone else apparently graded the hell out of is just literally worth $40-50 in PSA 10s for like some of the best, Charmanders, Pikachus. Like, if you get more than $50 for any of those as a PSA 10 besides the Charizard, you're doing pretty good. Like, I don't even know if the Blastoise and the Venusaur in those decks are holding above $100, which is insane.
Yeah, yeah, it's I think it's the same way in Japanese. Like Blastoise is pretty cheap. I don't even know what Venusaur's at, and then all the starters are like $35, $40.
It's
But what's
it,
funny is like not even the race to the bottom stuff. Like nice stuff is cheap. Like
yeah.
hard to replace, hard to find minty like cars are selling for what effectively would be a break even or a slight loss. Like you, especially on auction. I mean, dude, there's like mid-era hollows that are selling for like 30-40 PSA 10.
Yeah.
Of like nice Pokemon, cool arts. Like it's crazy. And these aren't like thousands and thousands of pops. It's like maybe like pop 50, pop 100, you know. If you're a collector and you're not buying right now, what are you doing? Like what, like honestly, what are you doing? Because it's like maybe things keep going down, certain things maybe still have room to drop, but on a lot of these cards, it's like, dude, if you can pick up PSA 10s of like vintage mid-era kind of stuff for $40, $35 after shipping, that seems like a crazy good, like I mean, I
Okay.
don't know, man.
Empoleon V, from Battle Styles, the alternate art. Now I get that Empoleon is not the most popular character. I get that it's like not the most popular art. It's still a $20 to $30 alternate art, basically, right? The PSA 10s I see for like, I was repricing a bunch of stuff for the next show and everything, and I had to go through all my old slab prices, like $45. Like 30, that's so if it's a $20 card raw in near mint condition with probably terrible centering, because V cards have terrible centering usually. Um, you're paying $15 to grade it. That's $35. And if you're selling it for $45 on eBay, or $50 if you're lucky for buy it now, $54.99 if you're really lucky and you promote it and you get someone to actually click because they don't want to scroll a little bit on the eBay, page for 5 seconds. Then you might get, after taxes and fees and shipping, you might make $5 out of it on a PSA 10. So what's that mean you're doing on a PSA 9, which is probably what you're grading, honestly, from modern alternate arts from Sword and Shield era, besides the VMAXs, which are usually better quality. So it's dark right now out there, even for some of the best things, which are like alternate arts, PSA 10s, modern, like, and I don't want to say like vintage is dark, because everyone knows vintage is dark. We don't have to raise that alarm. Like, there are $30, 20-something dollar auctions on PSA 9 base set unlimited hollows that end. So I don't want to hear about how vintage is not in a dark place, because we all know that. But people who say that modern isn't, and that it's like it's all really strong, I don't know what you're smoking, or I guess they're not very many people are saying that, really. So I'd just love to hear down below, like in the comments, if I'm apparently smoking the good stuff, because like, shoot, I just don't see where there's profit to be made in the current grading scheme with modern. You have to get really creative, basically.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, like I remember the whole thing was like, oh, well, if prices drop to a certain point, I'll buy everything. And if I just could have got, in before the boom, I would have such a crazy collection. And it's like, if that was you saying those things, now's your time. Like, now is your
Please come
time.
buy me out. If you're that person and you meant it, please just come buy me out right now, because what you said back then has come true, and I still have all my inventory.
It's just it's a good time to be picking up. I mean, if you're confident in the market, I mean, yeah, man, like it's just a good time to be a collector. Like, you don't have to do any of the work. You just buy the cards already graded on auction, and you get nice stuff for cheap. It's crazy. Like, it's been this way for like 2 or 3 months now. But every time I go and look at like recent solds for certain cards, I'm like, geez, that's cheap. Like, if I was a collector, like that's a snap buy, But then people get scared because they're like, oh, well, it's down. So like, I don't want to buy it now because it could go down more. And like, if it's so cheap, clearly nobody wants it. That's why it's so cheap. So like, then they get scared and they don't want to buy it. But yeah, man, I mean, if you're collecting and you're not buying aggressively right now, I don't know what you're doing. And if you're investing, it's like, dude, a lot of this stuff feels like rock bottom pricing, and
But where do you
part of
think
it
we go
might
from
be
here?
that,
What do you think you think it's going to keep going down? I mean, you said rock bottom, but I
I mean,
mean, where do we go from here?
certain things probably have room to come down, as always. Like, the market's not a monolith. Certain stuff's undervalued, certain stuff's overvalued, blah blah blah. But I and like, to your point about people not having a backbone, I think that there's a lot of people that saw that there was money to be made in this, and then they grade cards and they list them, and then they don't value their time, and they are just like, they'll list it, and if it doesn't sell in a day, they're like, oh my god, like the market's crashing, or like this is not liquid. And so then they'll like keep dropping the price and dropping the price, and then that brings like the entire market down, which is fine. But and those people will get washed out quickly, because you can't make money doing that. Like, if you're spending $100 on a raw card, grading it for 15, and then selling it for $150 when low list was like 189.99 or something, because you're just scared that it didn't sell in a day and you want to get out of it and get your money back. Like, first of all, going back to our not going full, like, you probably shouldn't be flipping to begin with if you need that money instantly back. Second of all, like, you're not going to be able to survive or grow a business with those kind of margins. So those people will eventually get washed out. Um, but yeah, I mean, spending $100 on a raw card to make $10 is not like a really attractive risk premium to me, on a lot of stuff. So it's just funny. But yeah, I mean, like people don't have a backbone. Everybody and their mom's grading. I still think a lot of people are collecting. I'm sure collectors have gotten smarter in certain cases. I mean, there's still obviously like, the first to market 10 sell for a ton, and then sort of like work their way down price wise. But I don't know, man. Like it's tough. I do think it's just some seasonality, especially on like the nicer stuff that's just going for way too cheap. I do think that 3 months from now, barring some black swan economic sort of event, I do think that like prices on a lot of this stuff will jump back up. And I just think people are auctioning stuff that they have like no business auctioning. Like it's like why are you selling that card on auction this time of year? Yeah, it's dark. It's dark for sure. But again, for collectors, great time to be a collector, man. Like especially if you're a graded collector and you're not buying right now, what the hell are you doing? What are you waiting for? Like now is your time to be buying stuff. And if you are confident in the future of the market as an investor, like now's probably a pretty good time to be picking some of this stuff up. I don't know. I don't know. What do you think?
It baffles me the thought process behind some of the like modern cards that are being listed and low listed and then relisted and then auctioned and things, because you would think that people kind of know better, or you think that the people would sort of learn that that's not, you don't want to compete with yourself. But when there's as much competition and as many sellers as there are, that even there are times when people will compete with themselves, and that's all you have to compete with. Like for me, for example, I have a lot of cards that I'm the only one listed for, but they're very niche cards that nobody else is necessarily looking for. But if I were to need to sell those cards, like if I need to push to sell them, I can't do it. If I auction them, they'd auction for like less than cost of grading probably. But if you need it, conversely, as the buyer, and you need that card and you go to look for it, I'm the only one there listed for it. And so essentially, you're going to buy that card no matter what the price is. So by me lowering the price continuously to try to like find the buyer when I'm already low listed, it's pointless. It does nothing. And what I see in this environment is people, when they're already the low list, if something doesn't sell in like a day or 2 days or 3 days, because they're so worried about what their competitors are going to put on the market because there's more coming out, they'll just keep lowering the price when they're already low list until it sells. And you're doing nobody any favors when that happens. And this is something I've also seen, the culture that goes along with that. And when they do that low list and it continues to not sell, what then they will go do is then run an auction for that card and then set a new low price point after it didn't sell for that buy it now price for new people to list at that new low buy it now. So you're literally just hurting yourself every time someone does that. So like it goes back to people not knowing how to sell, not having any business being in position to have to sell, or they put themselves in that position essentially. And then also not having the backbone to know who your buyer is and to know when you can lower the price and get a new buyer, because the reason your item's not selling is because it's a price issue, or the reason your item's not selling is because you just don't have a buyer in front of you right then. You have to wait for the right buyer, and when they do, they will buy it. So having confidence and understanding how to sell things is not something that you can easily tell people how to do or teach them how to do, but it's something that's very important. And in this exact situation, we see it day in and day out, and we're seeing it in the slab prices and the lack of like, the, because sellers have the overall power. When it comes, buyers have the power, but sellers also have the power. No seller is required to sell an item for any number, and no buyer is required to buy an item for any number. So you have to find a nice, healthy medium. And in a lot of the cases, when there's an abundance of something, the buyer has the power there because they can go anywhere else. So I guess it's just one of those things that maybe people are grading the wrong things. Maybe there's too many people grading and not enough buyers, or maybe we're just crazy and I'm selling the wrong things entirely. So I don't know, but
No,
definitely.
I mean, I definitely think that, you know, to your point about like, oh, it didn't sell. Like now I need to run an auction. You're competing with yourself. You have 4 copies of a card. It doesn't sell in a day. You drop the price 10%. Next day you drop it 10%, 10%, and then you end up auctioning it like you were saying, and then you just, you know, set a new low price for the other 3 cards that you need to sell. I mean, it's it's funny to watch, but like I look at you know, some of the biggest sales that you've done, right? Like your Meji first appearance cards, like you know, you had the Slow King and stuff like that, and that is just sort of like having a confidence. And we've talked about this before, but it's like, okay, go replace it then. Like if I was broke or something, yeah, sure, I'm gonna take an offer or whatever. But like I'm chilling, I know what this card is. Like I'm, you know, I'll wait for the buyer to come to me, and having that confidence. Like if you're grading something nice and you know it's nice, it's a popular Pokemon, cool art, high liquidity. People have to stop expecting that like the day you list it on eBay, yeah, like that kind
When
of.
you
It's like
say go
what.
replace it, then with something like this, you can go to 20 million other, you know, a billion other listings, just at the one that's 99 cents cheaper.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But like you can't with stuff like you said, like your first appearance or
Yeah.
different things like that. And so just having the confidence to know, like, you know, the whole meme, like I know what I have or whatever. But it's like, yeah, I mean, with some stuff, it's like, all right, like I know this is a good card. When you get a PSA return back, you can't put yourself in a position to where you're like, oh, I have to sell all this today, or I'm not going to be able to pay my credit card bills, because that puts you in the position to where you're going to start tanking the market against yourself, right? And yeah, I think people just have this idea that like, oh well, I saw Blastoise sell for $150, so as soon as I get my PSA return back 3 months from now, 2 months from now, I'm going to list it and it's going to sell instantly for $150. It doesn't work like that, right? Like you, people need to understand 90-day sell through and all that sort of stuff, and they just don't right now. And but again, like people are going to get flushed out, and the businesses are going to. It's like, okay, look at Charizard UPC. Who are the winners and who are the losers on Charizard UPC? Well, the losers are the people that bought a ton of those on allocation, bought them on credit cards, are broke, needed that product to move and for them to make money, for them to survive,
They sold
and
it for under what they
sold them
paid.
on Facebook for $80 and
Yep.
lost after shipping and all that sort of stuff, lost like $10 or $12 per Charizard UPC, took thousands of dollars in losses. Who are the winners? People like Dan, who have hundreds sitting at Troll and Toe that he doesn't need to sell. And now that they've started to move up in price, when they come back from Troll and Toad, Dan's going to start selling those. Maybe he breaks them down so he gets packs for booster pack breaks or whatever. But even if he didn't break them down and he sold, they're like, what, 120 now, and probably going to keep on moving up. And Dan was buying those at $70, $80. That's the winners. Those are the winners. Like the people that are well capitalized enough to not race to the bottom, to not undercut themselves, to not compete against themselves. Those are the winners. Like, and as unfortunate as it is, like people need to go broke. Businesses need to go out of business for the market to sort of like restabilize. The paper hands, like, you know, the whole title of the podcast, like the paper hands people, like you're not going to survive. You're just not,
You
right? Like
gotta
the
have
minute
at least cardboard hands here, baby. You can't
yeah,
be having no
you
paper
gotta have the
hands.
cardboard hands. Like you gotta have enough money to be able to. I mean, you have to make good decisions. You can't be buying garbage product that everybody else can get and expecting that, you know, you're gonna make these crazy profits or anything like that. But yeah, like you have to put yourself in a good position. And unfortunately, I think a lot of businesses are gonna go out of business, but that needs to happen for the market to restabilize, because, you know, on top of all this other perfect storm thing and people selling too low, there's just a lot of people grading right now.
Yeah,
There's a
and
lot of
that
people.
being said, I'm actually also going to be repositioning myself, and I won't be grading some of those cards. I'm just going to be setting them back in my box and, you know, getting ready to send at a lower rate, or maybe send when the market changes a little bit. But why put a ton of capital into something that's like not necessarily so businesses have to be able to, when things like slab prices getting dark, you also have to be able to be like, let's just hope my whole business doesn't hinge just on slab grading. So let's just hope that if your business does only hinge on grading, then maybe you can pivot in such a way that you could still find a way to make it work. But for me, I'm just not going to be grading as much. Like, I never liked grading before. Long before I was big into grading, I was more into, like, selling singles, pack breaks, just sort of reselling to breakers online and supplying people with distributions, being more like an intermediary, like a game store kind of. And so that's probably where I'll end up leading back to. But it's definitely something. It's important that when you see things like macroeconomic things happening, like when you see slab prices being as dark as they are, that you don't just keep auctioning. You don't just keep on doing what you're doing if it's not working anymore, that you can pivot when necessary. Or that if you do see, if you think it's just a blip, if you think this is just something, it's important to see when you need to be confident and continue doing what you're supposed to be doing and just kind of bear through it. So those two distinguishes, it's hard to distinguish, but you need to be able to make those those features.
I remember we had that conversation about like the SAR promo out of the UPC, and you were just like, "Oh, this is way too cheap. Like it's like $2. The Mewtwo's like $1, right? And the PSA 10s are selling for over $100." And to your point about confidence, it's just like sometimes, like, nobody has a crystal ball. Sometimes you're gonna be really confident in something and it's not gonna pan out, right? Like, a lot of people made the Gold Star Greninja play and it didn't really work out. That's fine. But some of the time, like, over the years of experience being in the hobby, paying attention to prices, market fluctuations, blah, 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 sometimes you're going to be confident in things and they are going to pan out. And if you're winning more than you're losing, like, that's a good thing. So
I was wrong about the classic collection, the English classic collection that just came out. I was dead wrong about that. It's probably going to end up being a break even, or maybe just only because of the work I put into it. I'll be able to make a profit on it, but not because of the product. The product is a failure, I would say. And I was wrong about that.
Yeah, but I guess the point I'm trying to get at is, like, at some point you have to draw the line in the sand and be like, nah. Like, I know what this is. I know this is a good product. I know this is a good card. This is a popular Pokemon. Like, yeah. No, the market is the market is wrong on this, right? And again, sometimes you're going to be wrong.
Yeah, but you just have to pull that trigger on that decision sometimes. Yeah, and have the confidence.
Confidence to be like, no way, dude. Mew, full art, SAR, crazy art, 151, one of the most popular sets, $2. Hell no, I'm buying a bunch of these. Maybe you're wrong. Maybe they sit for 6 months or a year and they don't move in price, but maybe they double. Maybe the PSA 10 price stays high enough that it makes sense for you to start opening a certain, percentage of your position, grading those, trying to hit 10s, whatever. You make money that, like, at a certain point, you have to have confidence in the market, because if everybody's just like, oh my God, the sky is falling, and like I've bought more slabs in the past 3 to 4 months. Now, again, like, there's margin priced in to where I could sell them at current market, still get out, make money or whatever. But when I see stuff that's too, I'm just like, I'll just buy it. I'm like, what? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And sometimes, like, I'll break even or make a slight profit, but sometimes, like, I win big because I'm like, this just does not make sense. This should not. And the thing that still gives me confidence on a bullish side is I will put things in my watch list or put things in my cart or whatever that I'm like, this is right on the cusp. Like, it's too cheap to me. It doesn't make sense, but there's not enough margin priced in to where I would snap buy it. And then I'll come back a couple days later and that card's gone. So somebody out there, whether they're a collector or they're a business, somebody out there values that card more than me. And as me, somebody that's not primarily focused on collecting, again, we are both super into cards. So maybe we think cards are cooler than other people do, but it can't just be me looking at these cards and be like, these are sick cards. This is this is too cheap. It just doesn't make sense. It's like, there's got to be somebody else out there that values that card more than me, and I feel like that about a lot. And again, so when I go back to my watch list and look at things where I'm like, that seemed too cheap, I added it to my watch list, and I come back and it's gone the next day, that reminds me, like, okay, well, there is some confidence out there. There is a buyer out there who values that card more than me or is willing to snap buy it at that price. So I think it's a little bit of seasonality. I think the market's a little bit flooded, but I don't think that interest is waning.
Mm-mm.
That would be my like, you know, put a
Yeah,
bow
so
on it
slab
sort of.
prices being low, I don't think that's an indicator of the market being not strong in Pokemon, because I would actually say the market's still, albeit with Scarlet and Violet being not as interesting of a generation, it's still incredibly strong in lots of other aspects. Like I get lots of people buying singles, lots of people collecting binders. I mean, I had this person who's collecting a binder of Scarlet and Violets, and it was like 151 had just came out, and they were collecting Scarlet and Violet base set, and I was like, "Oh, do you want any 151?" They're like, "I'm not getting there yet. I'm still on, the first set of the series." So there are people who are still, new to it, and there's still really strength. I would say there's strength in the market, but the slab pricing, I think, like you said, is a lot to do with those other factors for sure.
Yeah, but I guess like to not continue on the rant, like, do you agree that like, or what's your like rapid uptake? Do you think that this is just seasonality, too much supply, things are flooded, too many people grading, but demand is still there and it'll work itself out? Or are you like maybe a little more cautious, like, like I don't know, like maybe we're entering a year that might be a little slower and it might take a longer time to bounce back? Like, what do you think there?
To be honest, I'm at such a wait and see point that I'm not willing to give up the grading avenue yet, but I'm not sending anything else until something changes. But I'm not stopping buying to send, if that makes sense. Because if push comes to shove, if I'm buying at a good enough rate, I can still sell raw, and that is always going to be, I think, a part of the hobby is the binder collecting, people wanting to have the cards themselves. I'm just not sure if the market sees the value in grading anymore like they did. And I think there may be a shift. And I don't know if all the sellers that came in and that shift in market that we talked about earlier in the podcast, that mentality of like investment, I don't know if that is going to ever go back to the hobby side where it's not viewed as an investment. And to me, that's scary for slab prices, and it doesn't leave a lot of room for upward mobility. It leaves a lot more room for downward pressure on the hobby as we see people stick around, continuing to drag their feet, try to do something that doesn't work longer than they should, and then continually push the market down. So, like, well, I think you and I see it, and we can see it looking at it like that. I think that there are some people who are going to have their blinders on, and they're going to keep doing this thing and auctioning and selling PSA 10s at a loss until they go bankrupt, instead of seeing it before and stopping and adjusting. You know what I mean? Because it worked for so long. And this, they just have to push through. It's just this stagnant period that they just have to get through. So I personally, I'm actually a lot more cautious than I expected myself to be moving forward this year with grading, because grading became such a big part of my business in the last year, and interest was so high in slabs. It was just, the liquidity was so much higher, and when it didn't need it, you could just find a seller or a bulk buyer to buy it at 70% market price, and market price is still, you're doing well on. That's not exactly as easy as it was back then, and it's not the same. And so I definitely think that while I think that they are low now, I think that we could continuously see a slight more shifting downward further, and that would go against the seasonality argument that I think we've made in the past. It just, I have, my instincts are telling me that this time is a little bit different, that there are so many more sellers, and that those sellers are so much more motivated to stay in the space and to I guess what I'm saying, to wrap it up, is I'm viewing it a little bit more pessimistically than you. I am also probably going to be grading a little bit less moving forward, because liquidity for slabs just in general where I sell them isn't as high. I'm going to be going as far as taking one of these two cases that's right there. I'm going to be not using two cases on my tables. I'm going to moving down to one single graded case on my 6 foot in-person tables. And I'm going to start setting up a little shelf and putting plushies and focusing more on more like wholesome, like plushies and things, and selling more singles. So yes, I've already planned and thought as accordingly. I'm going to be like downsizing my graded part of my business in my live in person events, I think.
That's fair. I think I want to say like in October-ish, I was like, oh, I'm gonna start taking money off the table, like da 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 da. And then like November and December printed crazy, so I got super bullish. Now I'm at a point to where I'm like 50-50. It could go either way, which doesn't really help anybody on the fence answer. But I think like I'm operating with more of a degree of caution, and I'm a lot pickier about like what I'm buying. Obviously, like when things are just liquid, the money's flowing, you're like, yeah, I'll grade this, I'll grade that, whatever. So definitely like more picky, but I'm not like willing to throw in the towel yet. I still
No,
think
that's
like,
not what I don't hope that's not what I was
yeah, no,
coming
not at
across as
all.
either.
Not at all. But like, I still think demand's there. I just think that there's
Yeah.
like a lot more supply. And again, like everywhere, not just
Yes.
graded cards. There's a lot of like raw cards. There's a lot of
Yeah.
sealed because Pokemon, like people get greedy. They see other people doing well. Same thing with the Pokemon company, right? Like they see their boxes appreciating 20%, 30%, 40% a year. They get greedy. They print more. They're like, clearly there's more demand here. We want to absorb more of that market share. We're going to print more. I think if Scarlet and Violet was printed the same amount Sun and Moon was, the sentiment around it would be completely different because
I mean,
people like the cards.
Look at One Piece
Yeah,
right
like,
now.
exactly.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, perfect analog. I mean, and One Piece has got sick cards in it too. Great art, great IP.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the fact that if as soon as One Piece gets overprinted, then it's like, oh well, Bandai ruins everything. No one wants it anymore. The stonks are all gone. It's the same. It's the same exact thing with Pokemon. And I'm confident in the Pokemon company to see the fact that things are maybe a little, and same thing with PSA. I'm confident that PSA might see, maybe less people start sending if prices aren't good, people aren't really making money. Maybe they do drop the prices. I mean, turnaround times have definitely gotten better, so that
Oh
tells me
baby,
something.
I got a stack of cards waiting for $10 right here. I might even send a couple.
That's a Neolugia. What are you waiting for $10 on Neolugia for?
PSA 1, baby. That's not. That's
okay,
not.
okay. I got you. I got you. But yeah, I don't know, man. Like I'm cautiously optimistic, but there are still things to where I'm just like, nah, I'm snapping. Like there are still things that I'm like, I know what that is, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Like I'll break even or take a slight loss or whatever, but there's certain things to where I'm still too confident on that I'm just like, nah, that's underpriced. And so far it's been going pretty well for me. But if I continue to be that far out on the risk curve and things sort of like continue to slowly trickle down a little bit, like I could end up getting burned. So I think I'm going to be a little more cautious moving forward. And one thing I will say is like I have like, you buy lots, you buy collections, you accumulate all this excess. Like you buy a lot, you just want the one card. And then you have all these other cards and you're like, whatever, like they're $1, $2, $5, whatever. You're like, I'll get to them later. And you build up all this like excess backlog. I'm at a point to where I have all this like excess stuff that I'm in for like nothing on that's just been sitting, taking up space. And I'm like, it's time to monetize this. Not because I'm like sweating the capital, but it's like, I don't want this stuff in my house anymore. I need to stay organized. And that has been a good way for me to not be like, I need to aggressively buy as much as I have been. I can wait for like good opportunities, new sets coming out. If the new set isn't great, I'm like, maybe I skip this set and I can wait till a set that does have popular, Pokemon or cards or good looking stuff in it. And I can sit and sell through my backlog. And so that's sort of a way I've been buffering, not making myself be like, oh, I have to buy more and more inventory. Like I have a ton of stuff that should have been listed 3-6 months ago that I've just been sitting on because it's like, oh, you buy the Yokohama Pikachu decks and you take out the Pikachu card and then the deck box is just sitting there. It's It's like, even if I only get $2 and make like $1 out of it on shipping, it's like, it was otherwise going to go in the trash. Like, I'll take $2 to sit and run that on auction or whatever, sell it for $14.99, buy it now. It's like, why not? You know, like all that little kind of stuff really adds up over time. So that's something I've been doing, is sort of like taking the spring cleaning approach and like cleaning out my house and cleaning out my backlog and inventory and stuff by just like auctioning stuff, getting stuff listed that's been sitting forever. Are you doing any of that at all? Like I'm sure you've accumulated. I mean, you break down tons and tons of product. I'm sure you've got promos out the wazoo and, you know, all sorts of stuff. So do you do any of that? Yeah, exactly. Like, are you doing any of that at all? Just like wholesaling this extra stuff that you're in for zero on?
Yeah, I continuously do that with my business. It's always been something that I cycle through. Oftentimes, what it started with was me just breaking down the boxes, collection boxes for the packs, and then having all the promos and little extra sleeves and things and stuff. And there's only so much of that stuff you can store when you live in California, like me, and space is limited. And so I have found many times, like that bag you saw there, I'll label it when I get to 100 on there, and I'll put 100 and I'll zip it up, throw it in a box. And once I get to like 1,000 or something, then I'll go and find a buyer for all of it at once it's all kind of put together. So with that kind of bulky stuff, I do have like an avenue. It just takes time and accumulation, and it's one of those things. You also have a lot of stuff that, like you said, like decks, like theme decks, or like, you know, old, you know, extra inventory from a distributor that I had to buy that after I've sold X amount of, I've sort of gotten out of on profits, and then I have this extra stuff that I just don't really want to sell anymore. So like I have a bunch of stuff that's above my head right there, and they're like old theme decks, blister packs. It's just not worth listing 1 to 3 blister packs as a buy it now. So I'll just kind of throw it in a box or throw it in a shelf, and eventually you do have to go back to that. And so like I also over the holidays was finding that that's what I was going back to. Instead of spending a lot of money, there wasn't a lot that I needed to buy right then. I would just go back and, like you said, run some auctions or maybe sell a couple of things, like, oh, I forgot I had this, it's appreciated a little since then, or ooh, this has gotten really low in price, I really need to just get this out of here. And so I've definitely done some of that. I've been wanting to do more lately because I actually stopped auctioning after December 15th. I don't run auctions in December. And I typically will stop them until after the new year, and I haven't started them back up yet again. But I've just had a bunch of, you know, I said the vet bills and all the other stuff that hit me at the beginning of this year. So I'm going to probably start running some auctions again soon now, because I'm starting to feel like at least that seasonality part of the hobby is starting to at least pass by. And now I can't blame seasonality if I run auctions and they don't do well. And so I just needed to take that seasonality part out of the equation, and then I'm going to be more comfortable running auctions again. So I actually do have some auctions running that are set. I'm going to start this Thursday for 10-day auctions, and there'll probably be more coming of just stuff, like you said, that I need to get out, like bulky things that I just don't care. I just want to get anything from. But I'm bad though, man. To answer your question more thoroughly and just and directly, I have so much junk like ahead of me. You can see some Dragon Ball Super, Dragon Ball Z, some old Team Up box, like literally I have so much junk that I just don't have the intention to sell, or I don't have the avenue to sell it, and it just doesn't make sense to make a whole listing for a couple things. And yeah, I need to start doing that more, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, stuff stuff that I'm in for absolute zero on, what I'll do is I'll figure out how much it's going to cost to ship. And if like, okay, so if it's going to cost me $5 to ship to basic, even like if I were to ship to New York, which for me is on like the literal other side of the country, right? Worst case scenario, I pay $5 to ship. Okay, I'm starting an auction, a 10-day auction, 99 cents with $6 shipping. And if it sells for $3, like I made some money and I made $1 on shipping on top of it. And it got out of my house. Like I cleaned my house and made a couple dollars. You know what I mean? Like I hate having clutter, and I hate not being able to find things and not being organized. Like that stresses me out hardcore. Having like all these extra raw cards and like all this stuff all over the place, like that stresses me out. And so like yeah, de-stressing, decluttering, getting back to being organized, and just like, let's just get this stuff out, you know, like that's especially on the stuff that I'm in for zero on. The stuff that I have some cost input into, like I had a bunch of raw cards, for instance, that I put in a binder, and the binder did really well at Collecticon. But then, you know, so like let's say half the binder sold, but then I still have all these cards that I didn't end up listing on eBay because I was like, well, I'll make good money off these $10, $20 a card at Collecticon. It's like, cool, well, half of that sold, but the rest of it is just like sitting there. And I'm like, I might as well get them listed. Like I plan on doing more in-person shows, but it's like, why not like get that stuff listed and like, you know, like get some of it sold. And like, to the point about the slab prices and stuff, like raw liquidity is great, you know, and like especially if you're selling stuff under $20 and you can ship it in the PWE 63 cents, like sleeve, top loader, whatever, like that. I mean that kind of stuff is great. So yeah. Anyways, but do you want to get into invest, flip, skip?
Yeah, and I mean, if you guys are seeing other things down below, tell us what you're seeing. Like, if you guys think the slab prices are really high right now and we're crazy, and we just spent like 45 minutes wasting our time on this, let us know. I wanna know what you think. But yes, I'm ready to go to invest, flip, or skip. This is gonna be a fun one this week. So if you're ready, I am.
Yeah, let's rock and roll.
All right. So this week of invest, flip, or skip, your favorite, your everyone's favorite segment, at least one of my favorite segments, at least, is going to be one that we have sort of touched a little bit on, not in this segment, but in other like podcasts that we've done. But this is one that I think deserved an invest, flip, or skip dedicated to it, because lately I've heard a little bit of talk about like eBay Live kind of rumblings in the YouTube sphere, which is weird because nobody ever talks about it really. And also Whatnot has sort of heard less about, ironically. So usually I'm hearing more about Whatnot, less about eBay Live. Now it's kind of different. And TikTok has just always been TikTok lately, though it's kind of been cooling off. So I kind of wanted to hear your take on these three. Like, if you had to, you know, throw your hat in the ring for these guys, what do you think about them? I want to go second on this since I have the experience of being a live seller. I kind of want to hear your take before I give mine. But yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't have any experience being a live seller, but I'll try to be, excuse me, quick. I got to get to the post office and we've been going for a minute. But okay, so I'm investing in eBay Live. I know it's in beta right now still, but I think, I mean, eBay is the number one selling platform. I think that when it gets out of beta, once they get some of the bugs fixed, once they do some more promotion and things like that, I think that eBay Live has nowhere to go but up. I'm confident in the future of it. So that would probably be like my invest, my long-term sort of, you know, play on that. Skip would be TikTok. TikTok has a so TikTok is actually like the number one app as far as like onboarding users, but I don't know enough about TikTok. I've never even downloaded it or been on there. So I'm not confident that commerce is necessarily like TikTok's number one driver as much as it's just like short form content. And with all the crazy coupons and stuff that they did, I'm not, I don't know if people are going to go to TikTok to like sit on there for 20, 30 minutes and watch a pack breaking stream and enter that. I think people go to TikTok maybe for like 15-second clips of videos, right? And maybe as a business, you can promote on there and then direct people to your site. But as far as selling directly on TikTok, I'm not sure how that's going to work. I could be way off on that, though. I know like Pokemon Radar works for them right now, and it's like, you know, onboarding sellers to TikTok. So maybe he does a good job with it. He's got a lot of experience in the card space, obviously. So maybe he turns that into something awesome. I could be way off on that, but that's just sort of my initial take, is I'd be skipping that. And then Whatnot flip, because I've been listening to a lot of sellers outside of the card space that run these massive Whatnot businesses. Most of the time it's low margin, high volume, right? Like, you know, comic sellers, clothing sellers, things like that. They're selling 300 items a day, making, you know, 10% margin, but it pencils, and they're running every single day. So I think that even though there's a lot of like scammy stuff and bad stuff that goes on Whatnot, I think Whatnot as a platform, when you take a step back and look at it even outside of the card space, you can run very successful businesses through Whatnot, doing high volume, low margin, and building a platform on there. So that would be my take on those three. What about you?
So this is going to be my first time that I have to throw an audible out on this one, and I think this is one that is maybe well deserved. If any of them, I'm going to throw an audible out, but I cannot invest in any three of these live selling platforms because the one that I believe will win or be the investable of them hasn't started doing it yet and hasn't really integrated. So I'm gonna say TikTok is going to be my flip. Currently, I think that TikTok still offers really good rates as far as like what their percentage that you get to sell at as a seller is. And as a buyer, they're still offering some pretty crazy discounts and deals, which I wouldn't necessarily count on being for the long term, but for the short term, I think that the flip on TikTok is like, as long as you aren't talking about on the seller side, the customer support, which I've had to deal with recently, and I hate TikTok and I'm never going to sell with them again. That's neither here nor there. We can get into it in another podcast because it deserves its own section altogether at some point. But they did me dirty. They burned me. And I'm never going to recommend a seller sells on TikTok until they get some sort of better customer service, some sort of better support system, something. When something goes wrong, you need to take care of your sellers and you need to take care of your buyers. But I'm never going to sell on TikTok again. But I'm going to say flip on TikTok, and it still offers some potential flippability for both buyer and seller. I'm going to skip both. Well, here, let's just go with this first. I'm going to skip Whatnot. Now, Whatnot, I've had a
Obviously.
tumultuous, relationship with. I don't think it's anyone's surprise that my stance on Whatnot is going to be a hard skip. And that is for all the reasons I've formerly stated about Whatnot. I think it's a wretched hive of scum and villainy. I think that they don't care about their buyers or their sellers on the platform and have proven such that they have done almost nothing to basically make their sellers and buyers whole when something happens detrimentally to them. They don't seem to have their back. They never really had my back. And so these are all just my opinions, mind you, but this is my experience as well about Whatnot. So I'm gonna have to hard pass and skip Whatnot. But the thing is, I can't invest. I cannot invest in any three of these companies, including eBay Live, because eBay Live has, to me, shown itself to be the most boomer, non-user friendly, and unwilling to really make changes and just slow going change wise. That it doesn't seem like they want to compete in the space. And so while I would have, from the outside looking in, saw these three and thought eBay would have been the one that was most comfortable for me putting my, my name in the hat for, because they're a big corporation that cares and they have a good track record with their current website and the way things work. But problem with eBay is it's not set up for live selling. It's a boomer website. It's set up for like old style auctions that like old 90s heads like us are cool with, but like the kids and younger generation, they don't do that. They don't do eBay like that. And they're certainly not going on eBay and finding out how to use their stupid live selling platform that I still to this day can't find on my app. If I want to go and watch someone live streaming, I have to like look up how to find it, or I have to
But
wait
you
for.
don't think that it's possible that in the future it becomes like, you don't think they know this and like end up fixing it? Like, do you think it's a BGS situation to where it's just like,
It's been almost half a year since it's been like kind of out, and it's like beta or whatever. Not, it's not even beta anymore. I think it's fully out as of now. And so
okay,
like,
wait, side note, it's been over a year since they acquired TCG Player, and there's still no like back end
yeah,
integration with TCG Player either. So
exactly. So it doesn't feel like they're buying and acquiring these companies because they want to innovate and make it better. It's like they're buying their competition because it's competition and then stifling it and just letting it do what it's doing because like, we own it now, no big deal. So I personally would not invest in a company that does that. Not in eBay Live. I like eBay, but
I'm
I
more
don't like eBay.
optimistic than you. Like, I think things take a while, but All right.
So
All
I'm
right.
skipping both Whatnot and eBay Live, and I'm investing in YouTube when it finally breaks into some sort of live platform like selling, shopping, sort of
Oh
like
yeah, yeah. YouTube ecom. Good night. Good
yeah,
night.
like
Like yeah,
literally once they do what TikTok just did and integrate it into their like get out all these other like fly by night little crappy Whatnot like eBay Live boomer ass companies trying to do what like the real guys should be doing no, that's all going to disappear. And so the one that I personally am going to invest in isn't on it's unfair. It's not here yet. So that's why we didn't use it, but I'm going to say YouTube. And YouTube, if you're listening to this, get on it. I will start selling. I will start pack breaking. I will start doing it all again if I could do it on YouTube because that's the platform of my choosing. I love YouTube. That's
yeah.
my
That
favorite
that.
platform.
See, I 100% agree with you on that. Like they actually this financial channel I watched called The Compound. They actually just did like a talk on like what if YouTube is valued at like 500. I mean, YouTube is it's massive in so many. I mean, did your mom watch like QVC and stuff when you were a kid? Like, do you remember?
A little bit,
So
yeah,
I remember QVC and like that was like the live selling thing. Like
yeah,
when I think about YouTube, it's like this is the live like PokeRev selling packs live. I mean, he had to have his own website, and
yeah,
PokeRev's massive, and his website was like kind of jank. Like it wasn't like the
yeah. So
nicest
imagine if you could do it integrated, like
directly direct. I mean, that would be
good
insane. That
night.
would be. I mean, they integrate with Shopify or something or whatever, and
Yeah,
I mean that would be massive, and in so many different things, right? Like video games, um, Pokemon cards, clothing. You got people doing like
everything. Like you could be at a like a farmer's market and watching a live walkthrough of a farmer's market, and the people would be like, "Oh, I want that that whatever thing that craft that they made at the farmer's market." They could buy it and send it to you, and you could all do it
yeah.
through YouTube.
Cooking is huge on YouTube. Like people watch cook like food content. You could buy. I mean, like the creator could have deals with Ninja Blender or Vitamix or
There's so much
the nice
avenue for
pans and you
yeah.
could just sell like, oh, I'm cooking up this crazy filet mignon. Here's the pans I'm using. You can click my affiliate link right here and buy them. You can save 20%. Like, dude, yeah, I'm 100% on board with that. I agree with you. Yeah, if YouTube did that, it would be good night for all these other platforms,
So we're just waiting. We're biding our time until YouTube does what's inevitably going to happen and integrates a shop platform onto their selling. So, that's where I'm going to invest in when it gets there.
That's fair. I will say though, like with eBay, I am like, I mean, even simple things like adding the tracked plain white envelope to TCG Player. It's like, dude, it's been a year. I don't know all the logistics that go into that, but it's like even if they added small, simple things like that to TCG Player, or vice versa, added certain features from TCG Player to eBay to where like you could just look up a card, it's a stock listing, click sell this. You don't have to take pictures. They have like the high res scan it, like, and you just sort of condition it. That kind of stuff, like once those things like start to mesh, the selling experience on both platforms is going to be great. I hope it's not just a situation like you said to where they're just trying to acquire their competition. I hope that they actually get some cross-platform functionality in there. So I'll take the optimistic approach here, but I mean, if another year goes by, like if we're sitting here at Christmas of this year and nothing has happened, then I'm gonna be like, all right, man, like what are y'all doing? Like, come on, dog. But I mean, like, look at how much PSA's done over the past couple of years. Like, they
Yeah.
didn't even have scans a year and a half ago, right?
Yeah.
Like some 7 certs or some late 6 certs didn't even have scans. Now, like you have scans on the app. You can hit the app or hit the card with the app on the QR code. It'll bring up the high res scan, show you the population, all that kind of like PSA's done a lot, right? Background features, right? Like you can create pictures of the slabs. That's what I do. Like I get a sub back, I take the card, I make a background for it, I download the picture, save a bunch of them into my photos, my camera roll, and then post those on Instagram. So I'm confident, but like, yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
I would like them to give me more reason to be confident. That's all. They've been dragging their feet. That's all I'm saying. But that being said, we need to get back to form with Invest, Flip, or Skip. So that's it for the episode. But if you're listening to this and you made it 2 hours and 13 minutes in and you're still listening, leave a comment down below. Give us an idea for invest, flip, or skip for next year, because we love when we get to read your comments
Next
and pick
week, not
something.
next year. Next week.
I'm sorry, next week.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
say
yeah,
next
yeah.
year. I'm in like New Year's mode still, even though
Yeah,
So
fair enough. Fair
leave
enough.
us a comment, because next week we would love to feature your invest, flip, or skip. Because as much as we like coming up with these ideas, I love hearing your guys' ideas even more. So I appreciate you, Nick. Thanks for putting up with me for these last couple of hours, and I appreciate everyone who's watching. But any last words or last things you like to say before we finish up until next week?
No, I would just double down, like definitely leave, whether it's topics or whether it's an invest, flip, skip, definitely leave that in the comments. And then again, going back to the Patreon thing, like let us know what we can do. Let us know what you would like to see out of it, and we'll do our absolute best to make it happen. If it's in our power and it makes sense, we'd love to do something that would provide value for you guys. Yeah, and then shameless plug. I'm starting a new live series called Let's Talk Business. The first episode is going to be this Friday. I'm having Dan on. It's gonna start off just talking about talking to card businesses. I'm gonna start off with Pokemon people, probably work in some sports people, but for the series, I just want it to be about business in general. So eventually, I'm gonna get on like other sellers from different reseller groups I'm in. Maybe bring in some comic people that sell toys, people that sell clothing, shoes, whatever, and just sort of like give people the stories of these businesses, and maybe get some of these businesses to sort of show like what their setups look like and things like that, because I think that can be like really interesting for people and maybe helpful as well. So yeah, shameless plug there. But yeah, again, I appreciate you, man. I mean, this is episode 31. We're gonna knock out as many as we can this year, keep it going, and yeah, it feels good to be consistent, and we really appreciate you guys liking and commenting and subscribing and stuff. Like it lets us know that the work doesn't go unnoticed. Like little things go a long way. So yeah, thank
We
you
have
all.
big stuff planned, so we're excited for the coming year, like we said. So thank you all for being along with the ride, and we'll see you on the next week's. So see you next time, guys.